Welcome to the fourth installment of Estate Planning Bootcamp. And I'm very excited that you all are here today, because today we're going to be talking about something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that's business succession planning or estate planning for business owners. We'll focus on some of the basics of the estate planning of business owners and the needs of business owners and what they're facing. I'd really like some hypotheticals from you, so throw out questions to me as we're going along, and I'll try to give you real life examples of how to solve it, or maybe not. Because what I have found in my practice, and today my practice is probably 50% business succession planning, just dealing with all aspects of it. What I found is that every case is different. There is no cookie cutter approach to business succession planning or estate planning for business owners. And the reason I say that is because every owner is different, every business is different, and even if you're in the same industry and you've got owners that may have similar characteristics, their families are different. And so the whole idea of trying to integrate the process of planning for a business to succeed beyond the founder, beyond the owner of the business, is a really tough thing to comprehend. And then planning for the family, one or two of which may be involved in the business, or none of which may be involved in the business. And then what do? How do we deal with this dynamic? How do we plan for this? So it's kind of exciting. I'm very excited. Today, I want you to be able to identify the issues, the concerns that your clients have as business owners, so that you can spot the issues, not necessarily provide all the solutions, but spot the issues for them. In addition, I want you to be able to have confidence in engaging in an estate planning discussion with business owners. And the discussion is, again, beyond estate planning. Business succession planning sort of involves multiple disciplines. It involves estate planning knowledge. It involves knowledge of taxation, income taxation, and estate and gift taxation. It involves knowledge of corporate governance, how to run a business, how to start a business, and how to sell a business. So it involves a knowledge of merger and acquisition, transactional issues, and it's very involved in executive compensation and human resource planning. So I'm involved in probably a dozen business succession plans right now, at this very moment. And they range in size from a company that's about $500 million in revenue down to a company that is struggling to get $1 million in revenue. Every owner has their issues, and every owner has their business succession challenges. So today I want to give you some ideas on how to deal with it. You're not going to be the business solution provider for everybody. You can't. You don't have the skill set. There's very few people in the world that could do everything for everybody. I can't. I have to bring in experts. Sometimes I have to bring in a valuation expert to help really understand what the value of the business is. Sometimes I have to bring in an HR expert who can help identify the skill sets that are needed to run the business beyond the founder, do it successfully. Sometimes I have to bring in an organizational psychologist. We do lots of different things for our clients, but we can't do everything for our clients. And so the idea is understand the different skill sets that are needed to do a successful business succession plan, depending on the client. If the client's a small business, a mom and pop type store, you're not going to bring in all these experts because the client is not going to pay for them. They don't want to pay that much money to engage in business succession planning. What they want to do is have ideas on how to deal with the kids, how to deal with the transition of the business, whether it can be sold or not, if it can be sold, how to do it, and who to bring in to help facilitate that. So some of the topics that we're going to focus on are the unique planning that's associated with the beneficiaries of the estate plan. Like I said, one kid may be involved in the business, one may not. None of them may be involved in the business. So what do we do in that instance? And again, it's going to vary from client to client and business to business. How do we plan for the business asset? There's a handout that we're going to cover a little bit about midway through the session. It's my business succession planning matrix. Others use the same kind of matrix. And the idea is that there's a process for business succession planning. And if you understand the process, you'll understand how complicated it can become to make sure that you're dealing with all the issues properly. So how do we deal with the business assets? And then how do we coordinate the entire estate? Because there are other assets that need to be taken into consideration besides the business. Now we know that the business is probably one of the biggest assets that your client has if they are business owners. It may be their only asset. It may be all of their wealth and liquidity is tied up in that particular asset. And again, it may be that they are starting to monetize the business by taking money out and setting it aside in savings or insurance or other products or investment vehicles that protect their livelihood after the business closes or is sold. And that's part of your job, is to plan for that. Your function as a financial planner is absolutely critical in this whole process. So, planning for beneficiaries. I had a couple of comments I wanted to make first. On the number of businesses that are coming into the mode of business succession. There's 28 million small businesses in the United States. That's based on an estimate from the Small Business Association. And that's probably 3 or 4 years old at this time, but it's pretty accurate to acknowledge that there are a lot of small businesses in the United States. It doesn't matter how many there are, because you all represent a bunch of them. I can tell you that right now. And we also know that small business represents 55% of all jobs in the United States. So it's absolutely critical in terms of the U.S. economy. There are 22 million self-employed individuals who run businesses or have no employees. 22 million. A lot of them are our clients. Now, a family-owned business does not equate to a small business. It might be a small business. But did you know that 35% of the Fortune 500 is family-owned or family-controlled? So we have publicly traded companies, a lot of them, that are family-owned businesses, that are not small businesses by any means. They're huge businesses. And we know that family-owned businesses comprise about 80 to 90% of all business in North America. So this is a very important area for all of us to focus on. Probably the most important statistic that I've repeated many, many times before is this. 30% of small businesses survive to the second generation. Only 30%. 70% fail. The third generation, only 12% survive. And by G4, only 3%. So our job is to try to, if it can be salvaged, if it can be passed on to the next generation, our job is to try to figure out how to do it. It's the best way to do it. All right, planning for beneficiaries. So, like I said, every family is different. And every beneficiary has different needs and different circumstances. The important issues are understanding the difference between equal and fair. Equal does not mean fair, and fair does not mean equal. We'll get into that. I'll give you some examples of that. Another goal is to minimize family conflict. Now, how many in here, in this room, have psychology backgrounds?
I do now.
We do. You do? Sure. I have a psychology background just because I have to deal with these issues every day, but I'm not a professional. I'm not licensed as a psychology professional. One person in here does, and I got to tell you that that is an incredibly important skill in this whole process. And so oftentimes, and I'll give you a good example, I have this one very large client where they have a family facilitator who was trained as he was originally a priest or a minister, and then he went into psychology, and now he's a business advisor. And he's excellent. I've watched him interface with the family, and the family is extremely difficult to deal with. We're dealing with high-intensity father, high-intensity kids, and other family members, and they're all emotional, and his job is to conduct family meetings for the family business and keep things running smoothly so that they don't kill each other. And so planning to minimize family conflicts is huge, but part of our job is to try to do that using our techniques, our tools, our issue spotting, and giving suggestions. There's no such thing as one size fits all here. And then 90% of my founders, not all of them, but 90% of the guys or women who start the businesses want the business to succeed beyond them, right? They want the business to succeed. And so how do you do that? So equal versus fair. Classic example. Dad starts a business. Daughter comes into the business. Two other kids, one is a school teacher, one is a race car driver, whatever. Do I give each of them the equal piece of the business? The one who's in the business will be extraordinarily highly resentful if you gave an equal vote to the other two, because they could outvote the kid who's in the business. Now, there are solutions we can offer. If the owner of the business says, I want my kids to have equal ownership, I don't care what you say, I don't care what anyone says, I want my kids to have equal ownership. Okay, fine. So you could give the voting control to the kid who's in the business. But then he's going to say, well, wait a second, I'm working my tail off, or she's going to say, I'm working my tail off, making this business a success. Shouldn't I be compensated for that? The answer is probably yes. So I've seen the opposite extreme, where the ones who are involved in the business basically take all the assets out of the business and leave nothing left for the kids who are given a share of the business. It's the classic minority shareholder syndrome. You own a small piece of the business for less than 50%. You have no vote. What do? Again, these are things that we can deal with in the corporate governance documents. We can address these things. We can put limits on the amount of compensation that the child who's involved in the business gets. That might work, but the child might resent that too. So again, this is an iterative process. We've got to sit down with the owner, we have to sit down with the kids who are involved in the business, and we may have to sit down with the kids who aren't involved in the business and really get inside their heads and find out what their objectives and goals are. Okay? We may have already gifted a piece of the business to the kids. We may have sold it to them. We've got to take that into consideration, account for it. And like I said, equal does not necessarily mean fair, and fair does not necessarily mean equal. So